Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm your host, Dan Hurley. We often glibly use the terms Greater Cincinnati and Tri-State when in fact the metropolitan area we live in is made up by some very distinct subdivisions. Growing up in Park Hills, I was very aware of the difficult situation Northern Kentucky faced. From the perspective of Louisville and Lexington and from the state capital in Frankfort, Northern Kentucky is often seen as nothing more than the southern suburbs of Cincinnati, for all practical purposes, part of another state. And at the same time, people in Hyde Park and Fairfield knew little more about Northern Kentucky than the way to the airport, which most thought should be in Ohio anyway. Trapped between a rock and a hard place, Northern Kentucky was almost invisible. In the past 15 to 20 years, however, Northern Kentucky has become the most dynamic sector of the region. The Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport has become an economic engine. Northern Kentucky has attracted national companies like Heinz Pet Foods and Toyota USA to relocate there. It has also attracted long-established Cincinnati businesses like Hennigan Printing and Sterling Cut Glass to move across the river. Places that were fields of corn when I was growing up have sprouted subdivisions with $500,000 homes. Northern Kentucky has arrived. Now here you see a shot of Northern Kentucky focusing on the riverfronts. 10 days ago, Northern Kentucky leaders unveiled a new 20-year vision of what would transform this area and much of Northern Kentucky. The proposed plan has been dubbed Quest. Quest paints a picture of continued development along the riverfronts and sweeping development of the areas of downtown Covington and Newport. One of the most exciting possibilities is a new transportation link between Covington, Newport, and Cincinnati.
Which would be an elevated transportation system of a high-tech, high-technology manner on the order probably of what's called a PERT, people moving system, are surrounding a loop which includes the new stadium and entertainment area in downtown Cincinnati on the river, coming over into Covington, going east through Newport, and then back over to Cincinnati.
With us this morning to discuss Quest, we have two of the people who played key roles in developing the vision. Father Bill Cleves is president of Thomas More College and the co-chair, along with Bill Butler, who you just heard, of the Quest process. And Joe Wind is the public relations director for Corporex and has had a major hand in writing the proposal. Good morning.
Good morning, Dan.
Father Cleves, why don't we begin by just asking the question, how did this Quest process begin and why now?
Well, 15 years ago, John Y. Brown, then governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, called a group of business leaders down to Frankfort, and Bill Butler was one of them. And the governor said, I want you to begin to think about the future of Northern Kentucky. And don't come to me as three individual counties. Come to me as one region with a proposal. So Bill got together a group, I think there were 12 of them, appointed by the governor. They got some grant money. They wrote a vision. A lot of that vision came true. And now, 15 years later, they decided, well, we needed to update the vision and to expand it.
Joe, Father Cleves has just used the term vision, and that's what's on the front of the document. What's it mean to say a vision, and how's that different than a plan?
Well, a vision is looking out in the future sometime. A vision is unbridled thinking about what you want the future to be. A plan is, in fact, the way to get there. And we're working on the plan on how to get there, but the vision, when we asked the people of Northern Kentucky to come forward with their ideas, we said, don't look at today's problems, today's opportunities, look at tomorrow's. And that's what visioning is all about.
There's some pretty wild stuff in some of this in the Quest document. One of the things shows the Licking River being dammed and backing it up and creating a marina type environment in Covington with development around that. Is that realistic? Is that something, or is he just throwing that in for fun?
Oh, that we believe is one of the most important issues. People from all over northern Kentucky say that the Ohio River is our best asset. Obviously it is. But why isn't our Licking River the second best asset? And what we can do is create basically a large bluer, I guess, if you would, lake up in, I guess, Alexandria area of the Licking River, and it's called Grants Lake. That could cause a sifting process, which we would put a dam up there, sifting out the mud essentially, and then creating an opportunity for a better flow of water from that point forward. There's a lot of recreation opportunities on the Grants Lake, but it also gives us an opportunity to reclaim the Licking River on both sides, have a walk trails. We even talk about horse riding trails along the Licking River, at amphitheater, which is really kind of nice to have right there at the urban area, Newport and Covington together, looking at a new place to entertain people. People say that today you go down to the riverfront and you can, there's nice places to eat now, but what do you do afterwards? And I think a lot of people are saying, we've got some entertainment opportunities. We have a lot to offer on the Cincinnati side of the river. Well, we really don't have a lot of the people that we're talking about, the future, the kids, the college-age students, the high school students. They said that they'd like a place to walk, a place to casually stroll, a place to play in a park. And we don't have enough of that, and this is an effort to move forward with reclaiming the Licking River and providing that opportunity.
There's some of the pieces of that beginning to take shape along the Ohio River with the walk along Riverside Drive in Covington along the top of the flood wall in Newport, but you're saying let's push it up farther on the Licking.
Correct.
One of the most challenging parts of this proposal is the proposal to unify the three county governments and also to do some things with the cities in northern Kentucky. Dr. Cleves, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, we had, as Joe mentioned, we really wanted to stretch people's imaginations, and we wanted people to start thinking outside the box, to use that cliche. And we listened to a lot of people, we listened to a lot of business people who spoke to us of the difficulty of getting licenses in all kinds of different cities. And in fact, in the past few weeks, that's improved dramatically for them. They can now get licenses for most of the cities at one stop. And so we decided that we needed to unify the government. Although Quest has nothing to do with the consolidation movements, it's interesting that both of them were running at the same time, and some of the people who were involved in one were involved in the other. So we said, well, just what if? You know, what if we were larger? You know, we took two trips. We took a trip to Indianapolis and we took a trip to Portland. And every time we asked the people in Indianapolis, what's responsible for this, say, the $310 million Circle Center Mall? They said, Unigov. You know, with that consolidation comes a bigger tax base that allows people to issue bonds more readily, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, you know that in the political arena, though, Unigov in this area, in northern Kentucky, in southwest Ohio, has been a dynamite term, and people have run from it like mad. Do you actually think things are turning around in northern Kentucky?
Well, what we wanted to do, you may recall just a few days ago, Judge Ken Paul came out with a proposal for what some people are calling a federation of the three counties and a super board. And what we really wanted to do above all else is to generate new ideas. So if, for example, the citizens of northern Kentucky decide, well, we don't want to consolidate the counties, but the super board is a good idea, well, then Quest will have accomplished its aim, because all kinds of new ideas are springing up now, and that's what we wanted to do. One of our principals used the phrase extraordinary imagination, and it seems to be working, right, Joe? I mean,
absolutely. And I think the important thing in this governance section is about this new and creative form of governance. We're not talking about the end all is consolidation. We think, as the Quest group, and actually when we had the public forums, this came out loud and clear. We need something new to govern ourselves. Whether it's consolidation or not, no one really knows the answers to that. Quest is committed to moving forward to finding a way to govern ourselves 20 years from now. So we're, again, unbridled, but we're going to get serious about the ways to do that. And Ken Paul's come up with an idea, and I expect several more to come forward.
One of the really concrete things that's talked about here, and I know is Northern Kentucky has been very active and actively involved with OKI in transportation planning, and that's what we heard Bill Butler talking about. How real is that? Because that, whether it's light rail or monorail, it's expensive. It's a lot of money involved. Is this, again, something that's real, or is it just a nice picture in the book?
Oh, I think, speaking for Bill Butler and myself, I think that monorail has a real future. And the reason monorail has a real future is because Japan and other major areas throughout the world have placed in these new and futuristic systems that have really spurred the economy. Light rail, as a lot of people don't realize, is a technology of overhead wires, essentially a streetcar. Right. It's that great. But monorail, as we placed in the Quest booklet, is an opportunity to put something new and be ahead of the curve. And there are also several types of technology coming forward, which we expect to be in place in the 20 years from now, that we haven't even thought of yet. And what we want to do in 20 years is be ahead of the curve. And I think with the energy and the interest level in this, I think it'll be done, especially from the downtown Cincinnati core to the airport. Mm-hmm. I think that's a key issue.
Now that you've brought up downtown Cincinnati, one of the real tricks, you are doing some visioning, beginnings of planning for Northern Kentucky, which is one part of the metropolitan area. Mm-hmm. What sort of response have you got over on the north side of the river to this, or even input into this as you were going on? Because getting those two sides of the river, it's a very wide river at times, and when it comes to cooperative planning.
There are people who live in Northern Kentucky and work in Cincinnati who were part of the Quest process. Mayor Qualls and John Shirey were both at the unveiling of Quest at Fidelity on the 6th of this month. They're very interested. One of the key things in the book is this concept that we have chosen to call partnering. That we said once we develop our vision for Northern Kentucky, we have to realize that we are part of this wider community. In fact, in some respects, there were people at the public forums who were way ahead of us, because I attended the first public forum on governance. And the first two gentlemen who spoke said, what we have to do is get rid of the states. Because Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky belong together, and it's the states that are getting in our way. So we should get rid of them and have a city-state kind of arrangement.
Well,
so,
in many ways, that is functionally the way we operate. As a city-state, Cincinnati pays very little attention to Columbus, and Northern Kentucky's relationship to Frankfort, as I was saying off the top, is tenuous at times. Mm-hmm. In fact, what does this do for that psychological condition in Northern Kentucky, and how does Quest address that issue of identity for Northern Kentuckians?
One of the things we call for, and this may be one of the most far-reaching bits of Quest, is a new name. Some people regard Northern Kentucky as a mere, I think the phrase geographic description or geographic appellation was used. And we wanted something that really identifies us. Some people in Louisville say they're Northern Kentucky. People east of us in Maysville would say they're Northern Kentucky. And so that probably caused the greatest amount of debate, you know, whether we need a new name, whether we don't need a new name. And there are people in Quest that are on both sides of that. Would you say that, Joe?
Absolutely. And everybody agrees that we need an identifier.
And what's the name that we could use?
Well, there were several names that came up. Some said Northern Kentucky, some said River Hills, some said a variety of things, and some said just keep it what it is. The key factor is if you're in marketing, and we do want to market the area of Northern Kentucky, and we will never forget that we're part of the Cincinnati, but we also want an identity of our own. I think that when you look at the map is the key issue. What does it say? It doesn't say Northern Kentucky. It doesn't appear. You assume it's a top half of Kentucky somewhere, but that's a nebulous kind of thing, and we need to decide who we are. And that whole discussion brought a lot of incredible ideas, and what we have to do is, again, get a good group of people, a good leadership group, to think that through. And it also, in that discussion, becomes our relationship with Cincinnati, which is important, or more importantly than Cincinnati, the entire tri-state area, because we are part of that. And you asked the question earlier about Cincinnati folks. Cincinnati folks have said, every meeting you go to, this is exciting. I want to be part of it. And we involved them early on. Several of the people on this side of the river were very interested in being a part of it and gave input during the entire process, which I think bodes well. And I think the people were embracing it, and they know, I think the leadership of Cincinnati realizes that we're extending our hand to work cooperatively.
You know, a lot of what's in here and what catches people's eyes, monorails, towers that span the Licking River, gigantic things. What, practically speaking, are the next steps? What are you going to do to move from those sorts of things to implementation, whatever needs to be done?
We have recently formed a group which we call Forward Quest. And on October the 2nd, at the Four Seasons, right behind Thomas More, at 7:30 in the morning, from 7:30 until noon, anyone who is interested in moving this forward can come to the meeting. And we're going to begin the process of implementing, saying, how do we take this vision and move it down the road? Several people and agencies have already stepped forth and said, well, I want to take this piece and run with it, or I'm already working on this piece. For example, we called for a one-stop human services mall.
Right.
Well, the Northern Kentucky Area Development District has formed a committee recently, and I'm on it. There are almost 70 people on it to say, how can we move this forward? There are people in other agencies that said, well, yeah, we've been hoping that someone would step forward and proclaim this publicly, and we want to be part of it.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to stay in touch, and we're going to be back to see how you've moved forward and go on to Quest Forward in the future. Have you been wondering why the Tri-State has seen so much of President Clinton and Bob Dole? Is it they love Cincinnati chili or our great weather? Stay with us, and we'll be right back. And we'll talk to Mike Allen, the head of the Hamilton County Republican Party, and see what the answers to those questions are.